Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Polished Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Oliver Cardrick, and joining me, as ever, is Matthew Patson.
Hello.
Well, that was a great introduction, wasn't it? Completely unscripted, off the cuff. I'm just amazing.
Does it show?
How have you been this week, Matthew?
I've been very well.
Enjoying our amazing weather?
Yes. We've actually got some sun down in Devon, which is not a common thing. So we're making the most of it by sitting indoors with the curtains drawn and recording a podcast.
Hey, I've got the curtains open, but I'm actually slightly sunburnt, but won't talk about that. This week we're going to be talking about the loot box controversy that happened last week that we talked about in the last episode, and we're going to be going into other gaming controversies. So you know that GTA will be coming up later on. But
it's gaming controversies, parentheses, don't look at us like that, it's been a slow week.
Yeah, it was this, or we somehow spend an hour and a half talking about a Red Dead Redemption trailer, which, segue, because I'm that good at it, is the first thing we're going to be talking about today.
Wow, okay.
So we had the third trailer, I think, for the Red Dead. This is like the first major trailer that's been dropped.
Yes.
That came out mid last week, I think. Again, I'm not a professional, so don't sue me. So what did you think of it, Matthew?
I thought it was good. I thought it was the best. It looks like it's starting to come together now. I'm starting to get excited about Red Dead now. I wasn't before, honestly.
I was excited, but I was cautiously optimistic is probably the best term to put it.
It's not to say I wasn't excited, just kind of it hadn't. I wasn't hyped. Is the word? Not that I'm hyped now after one trailer, but I'm certainly like, oh, okay. I've been quietly concerned that they're going to drop the ball with it. I don't know why, but I guess that's just me. But yeah, this first trailer is the first time that it's really going to be something to behold, I think.
Oh, I think this trailer is the one that sold it, and I will admit I might have let out a tiny little squeal when I saw John Marston in the trailer.
Yeah, so this is the first confirmation we've had that John Marston is actually going to be in the game.
And it was, yay!
Yeah, very good news. Very, very happy with that. He's just a fascinating character, I think, and to be able to explore him a bit more would be great.
Oh yeah, one of the best video game protagonists out there, or one of the most three-dimensional I think we've ever had. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I'm pretty sure we got a shot of Abigail as well.
I don't know about that.
Because there's a scene where they're like all sat around a campfire, and I assume it's meant to be Dutch's gang because, well, that's who the game is about. And there's all the guys sat around there, and then there's one woman with brown hair. So I'm just kind of assuming that's probably Abigail.
I didn't notice that. I'll have to go back and watch it, actually.
But that's if they're doing, this is about the time period that her and John met. I mean, judging by how old Jack was, and this, we got confirmation that this is set 12 years before Red Dead 1, and I'd say Jack was probably about 14 during that game.
I think that's about right, actually, yeah.
So I'd assume he's already alive. John's already had him in this game. It would make sense for her to be in this storyline. So yeah, we've had the time frame confirmation. Oh, we have to spend a little bit of time talking. This is probably one of the most beautiful graphical games I've ever seen. If this trailer is actual of gameplay.
Yeah, Rockstar have never really disappointed. Certainly on the graphical, technical side of most of the games they've released in the last few years. Certainly GTA 4, if anything, it could be described as a bit triple A, so a bit sort of grey.
Yeah.
But it could be argued that matched the overall tone of the game, you know. And obviously the first Red Dead was just miles beyond anything that had come out before it. And obviously GTA 5.
It still looks good today.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how old now? Like, probably coming up on 5-6 years, and it's still... I mean, they did re-release it on next-gen console, but that original version still looks incredible. We also, I think is this the first time we've actually had a confirmation of a release date?
Yes. Yeah, I think it is.
It's 28th of October, I think?
Yeah. I'm taking that with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
If there's one thing Rockstar do well besides make good-looking games, it's delay games.
Yes. Well, this has already been delayed by like half a year or something, or even a full year.
Yeah, I know, and I'm cautiously expecting more.
But I'd rather have that than release it early and we have another Unity on our hands.
Yeah, that's. I think when Rockstar delay their games, it is to ensure that they fucking work.
Yeah.
There's no massive day one patches needed or anything like that.
So I'm, as I said, cautiously optimistic about this. I feel it's Rockstar. I mean, it's kind of a safe bet that it's going to be a good game. I mean, I can't really think of many of their flops. There've probably been some, but I haven't really played them. Maybe they made Max Payne 3, didn't they?
Yeah, and that was by no means bad. I'm not. Having never played Max Payne 3, I don't know what the story is with it. It generally received pretty good reviews, actually.
Oh, okay, so they are nailing it. But yeah, so we'll have to. I mean, we can't really say much. It was like a 1.5-minute long trailer.
Yeah, exactly. We've extrapolated about 7 minutes of dialogue from a trailer that was like a quarter of that length. So
yeah, we're gonna move on now. Like again, seamlessly. I can't think of a segue for the next thing, so I'm just gonna randomly say Marvel and go, hey, let's talk about the Luke Cage trailer that came out this week.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Marvel,
yeah.
So we got a trailer for Luke Cage season 2. Retrospectively, I'm realizing more and more that Luke Cage was quite a good series, and I never really realized that at the time, but I think it's actually quite good.
I think it came out at the right time. Like, I know I am the perfect person to talk about this as being British and white, but the story of a bulletproof black man in America, it's kind of the time that this story needed to be told.
I think so.
I mean, again, outsider looking in, I'm not going to put my hand in that argument, but that
part is too hot to stir.
Yeah,
apparently, I think, especially from this side of the ocean.
But it's the same reason that Black Panther did so well. It's just that it's
accidentally quite topical.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, good. The trailer looks awesome, and Matthew, we're getting Misty Knight's bionic arm.
Yeah, so I went through the whole of the season 1 of Luke Cage, not realising who Misty Knight was until she got her arm chopped off, and then it just clicked inside my head, and I was like, oh! So Misty Knight in the comics has an arm that's made of, I think it's Antarctic vibranium.
I love comic books.
Which I think vibrates. It vibrates and weakens the molecular bonds between metals. I think it destroys any metal. I think that includes adamantium. Maybe we'll see that come into play with the villain. I've already forgotten his name.
I've got it here, Matthew. His name is Bushmaster.
Bushmaster. It's a stupid name, but
he's a snake.
He's a guy made of unliving metal. So we'll probably see that bionic arm come into play a bit. I'm just quite glad that they went ahead with it. It's quite a comic book thing to do, especially with a series that's up until now been so serious.
Very grounded
with the issues. Exactly with the issues that it's tackling.
It's going to be Rand technology, isn't it? Keeping within that same universe, Danny Rand's obviously made it for her.
Probably. Anything that reminds me of Iron Fist makes me somewhat sad. So.
But he's the Iron Fist.
Yeah, he is the immortal Iron Fist.
He won't let us forget it.
The immortal whiny iron bitch.
Oh god, that was a mistake.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing. Right. I think we should move on. So in the last few days, it's been announced that we've known it was coming for some time, but season 5 of Arrested Development is going to be dropping at the end of this month. We had a trailer for it. not that long ago, actually. I think yesterday, day before.
Yeah, within like last 2 days.
And it actually looks quite good, I guess. Again, it's a minute and a half. It's Arrested Development is the sort of show that a trailer doesn't do justice to.
No. You just need to go watch series 1 to 3, basically.
Yeah, I feel like I should finally finish series 4 just so I know what the fuck's going on.
I don't think they knew what the fuck was going on when they were filming that.
No, so anyone who hasn't watched Arrested Development, go and watch it. Season 1 through 3 at least. It's very well written. The earlier seasons were directed by the Russo brothers of MCU fame.
They just made a little film, you might have seen it, called Infinity War.
Yeah, it's an obscure thing. I think it's still in cinemas.
Yeah. You'll catch it if you're lucky.
So, for anyone who has watched Arrested Development, they'll know Season 4 wasn't all that good, and that's why people are somewhat apprehensive about this new season. So the issue with Season 4 is that none of the cast were free to film scenes at the same time, which is why it took a more kind of... it was less streamlined. It took a more sort of episodic approach.
Well, that's understandable.
With episodes focusing on different characters. Yeah, exactly. It's not the fault of casting commitments are a thing.
And Jason Bateman is one of the biggest comedy stars in the world right now. Michael Cera's career has exploded since Arrested Development. Even I can't remember his name. The guy that plays Tobias. David Cross.
David Cross, that's the one.
Even his career's exploded since this. So getting them all back.
He's done some stand-up actually. He's a funny guy.
He was in Alvin and the Chipmunks, but we'll try and forget about that.
I did not know that, and I did not need to. So season 5, it seems to me that they've got all the original cast free. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it could be the season that season 4 should have been. I think.
We can hope.
Side
anyway.
note. So I didn't watch Arrested Development when it first came out. I only watched it quite sort of relatively recently. Everyone's so old now.
Oh yeah.
Age is a thing, Ollie, and that makes me sad.
Well, give me a second. I'll look up the year the first series came out, and you can just
I think it was 2003, something like that. But Jessica Walter, Lucille Bluth, she's in her sort of mid to late 70s now. I just didn't realise quite how early it was recorded, so mortality's a thing, and that is bad. That's what I'm saying.
The original series ran from November 2003 to February 2006. So, 15 years ago.
Yeah, so... Yeah, it's just funny, as someone who obviously didn't watch it when it first came out, who only watched it recently. It's just interesting.
Oh, yeah, it's promising that a show like this can come back, because it was one of the first comedies that did that kind of humour. I mean, that's all over the place now. You've got the wacky, surreal comedy. You've had Community. You've had Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You've had The Office. All of these incredibly successful sitcoms that were realistic, but in like a slightly like crazy world.
Yeah.
Arrested Development was kind of the first show that did this way before the rest of them, and it was cancelled too soon, as all the best shows seem to be. And Netflix have brought it back. Season 4 wasn't a mistake, but it was a step down from where it used to be. Did they? I just think, is Ron Howard coming back for this? Because he's kind of very big now.
I would presume so, because he's in the trailer as the narrator.
Oh, then he'll be back. Yeah, so yeah, it's narrated by Ron Howard, who
just has the best narrating voice, I think.
And it has just finished work on Star Wars Solo, so
sorry, reflex.
So he's a very busy man. He's award-winning director to come and do narration on a little Netflix show like this shows how much the cast loved. In fact, the fact that all of them have come back shows how much they all loved.
Well, either that or how irrelevant they are now. I imagine Jeffrey Tambor's finding it hard to find work because the allegations raised against him.
But like as I said, Jason Bateman, he doesn't need to work. He doesn't need to make this.
No, of course. I imagine it's quite a fun thing, and obviously they probably know each other. They were on the same show for ages, and then they all came back for it again.
Yeah. And they all kind of were discovered at the same time. Like, this show is the reason that Michael Cera has a career. Like, and he's huge. Well,
oh yeah, quick side note. I'm interested to see what they do with Michael Cera's character, George Michael, obviously the grandson of George Bluth. Because I don't know if they're going to carry on trying to portray him as a child, because Michael Cera, and anyone who watched the original series, get ready to feel really old. Michael Cera's 29 now. So I don't know whether they're going to carry on pretending he's a child or not.
They could.
That's the only
He still
thing.
looks like one.
Oh, yeah, of course, he still looks like a child. But
That's a good thing. I wish I still looked like a kid sometimes.
well,
when you reach the age of 21 and everywhere stops IDing you, that's quite a depressing moment. It's like I want to be young. Okay, I realise I'm just going off on a tangent here.
yeah, that's something for your therapy sessions, not for a podcast. So before we move on, we've got a few quick little headlines that there isn't really much to say about. So the first one, so the biggest game in the world right now is Fortnite.
Yay!
It's a crafting survival battle royale game. It drops 100 players on an increasingly small arena, and just says, right, there's 100 of you. Let's see who wins. The reason I mention it is because they're crossing over with Marvel. So there's a limited time match mode where you can find the Infinity Gauntlet on the map and become Thanos. I don't know where this has come from. This is very sort of out of the blue. I know that their new season that they've just released is focusing on sort of superheroes and superhero films in particular. But it just seems like it's come very out of the blue. I only learned it existed yesterday, and I've seen gameplay of it, and just Thanos in the art style of Fortnite makes me unhappy. I don't like how it makes me feel.
It's a very weird move. I mean, the cynic in me would make the argument that this is clearly just a publicity stunt. But if there's one thing on the planet that's as big as Marvel right now, it's Fortnite. It doesn't need this publicity.
No, I guess it's to draw in Marvel people. I have no idea. I've just wanted to mention it because I think it's funny and confusing at the same time.
Is this the... I mean, this actually probably won't be, because I mean we had the Marvel team-up games, but this might be one of the first mainstream releases of a game featuring Thanos. That's depressing.
Bar Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which included Thanos, and it integrated the Infinity Stones into its combat, I think. I'm not sure, but that was, on the whole, quite a forgettable game. So,
well, most superhero games that aren't Rocksteady's Batman are pretty unforgettable. Segue!
Well, that's true. Oh, Ollie, your segues.
Right, so the final mini story that we're talking about, it might not be a story, it might be just rumour. We don't know. But there's heavy rumour that Rocksteady, the company that made the Arkham games, Asylum, City, and Night, but they didn't make Origins, that was Warner Brother games, have, well, again, not announced. I think it will be announced. This is a pretty safe rumour to get.
Yeah, the rumour is that they will announce it very shortly.
Yeah, they're making a Superman game. Now, Superman and, well,
games.
Adaptation in general don't normally go well together. We were talking before we started recording that the Superman Returns game was fun, but not because of the storyline or the character or anything. It's just that they gave you Superman in an open world, which is fun, and if this is going to be anything like that, I will enjoy flying around the city as Superman doing crazy stuff, because that will always be fun, but
it's
integrating...
taking a character that could do anything and trying to bind that to a controller, it's always going to be clunky. I think clunky will be the word. If they can smoothen the controls out slightly and make it something more than just fly to the place and punch all the dudes, like like the large amount of sort of Superman Returns era superhero games were, Aquaman Battle for Atlantis is one that pops into my head. That was certainly just go to a place and punch all the dudes. But if they can make it more than that, maybe take some lessons in combat from Rocksteady, from the upcoming Spider-Man game, and make it more than just fly around into things, it could be quite good. And obviously Rocksteady have proven that they know how to handle intellectual property with Asylum and City, and I guess Night, but mainly Asylum and City being two of the best, if not the two best superhero games ever made.
Oh, without a shout. The one thing that does worry me, though, is what I really liked about City and Asylum, less about Origins and Night, was that it was a open world. Well, Asylum wasn't really open world, but City was. But it wasn't a huge, expansive world where you have a city to explore. It was very condensed and deep. Like, there was a lot. Like, most of it was interiors, and it felt like very claustrophobic and very much you were trapped in this place with Batman. That's not going to work in a Superman game. A Superman game needs a massive fucking map where you can just fly around. And I feel like Rocksteady don't have the experience making that sort of world, and we might suffer some of the depth that their worlds have for size.
Well, the inherent problem with making a big map is you've got to make sure it's full of stuff. There's a game we'll be talking about later on. It's made the biggest world any video game had ever seen. But the problem with making worlds that big is that they didn't do anything with them. They were just kind of plonked there. We were told to make our own amusement with them, but we weren't given a way to.
I mean, yeah, a lot of GTA 5's map is just fields.
Yeah,
it's like,
no, that's true.
With nothing in them, so it's the city's really good. The small little city they built was very deep.
Game world size is irrelevant. Arkham Asylum is a testament to that. You know, it was in comparison to some world maps, it was confined. But you never felt like you weren't doing things. There was always things you could be doing. Everything was very, very purposefully laid out.
But it's promising because, I mean, Rocksteady, apart from the fiasco that happened with Night and you got the botched launch on the PC, and you've got the string of people that don't like the Batmobile.
I suppose it wasn't so much a botched launch as
it just didn't work.
Cancel. I don't think Arkham Knight even exists on PC anymore.
Yeah.
They just gave up because they were quote unquote too busy working on DLC. Now that was Warner Brothers' words, not Rocksteady.
And the DLC for that game, I bought the season pass because I thought, like, hey, this might be quite fun. And then I got my pre-order copy, which was the Harley Quinn pre-order copy, and the Harley Quinn mission was 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
It's just, and that was the standard of the way this game went. Alongside this, though, Warner Brothers are currently working on their own Batman game in the Arkham series. I think it's going to be announced this year at E3, I think is the rumour. Again, there's been no official announcement on this game. But that's a risky move as well. Like, the series has a definitive end. Like, at the end of it ends.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
At the end of Night, the game ends. I mean, I don't know if I should say how it ends. I mean, it is like 4 years old now, but
it's very conclusive.
Yeah.
It's I'm glad that Night was the last game. Not so much because it was a bad game, just that there was nowhere further for it to go. I feel like they should leave it at those three. Let's say three. Let's forget that Origins exists. I think it's better to leave it at those three because you've got a definitive series that concludes every single of its arcs, rather than pushing it on for the sake of, oh hey, people will buy it. It's kind of I'm trying to think how to phrase this. it retroactively taints the previous games when you make it clear you're pushing through with the series just for the money it will make you.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at the cop out that happened with Arkham Knight. Like I will say this because it's not a spoiler. Well, it is, but everyone knows about it. Is the Joker is in Arkham Knight, and his death in Arkham City was, I would say, one of the strongest moments in Batman history, not just video game. Like, it was just an incredible moment to see Batman carrying the dead Joker out, as in, like, this is the end of his foe, who's not, I wouldn't say they were friends, but Batman isn't Batman without the Joker, and I feel like...
There's certainly been the whole kind of, could Batman exist without the Joker? The kind of yin and yang to each other. And
for him to die was an incredibly ballsy move for Rocksteady to make, and then no, he's back in the next game. And it's just...
Well, he wasn't so much, but he was kind of... He wasn't alive, certainly, but his presence in that game certainly cheapens it.
He was in the game more than he's been in the other games, because he just...
Again, nothing to say about Mark Hamill's performance.
Perfect.
Mark Hamill could never give a bad performance as the Joker. I think he's proven that now.
And Kevin Conroy. It's just...
Kevin Conroy, excellent as well, but his presence there
took the weight out of the death of the character.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else can I say? Oh, yes. Now, here we go. I'm going to be 3 for 3 right now. But going back to the botched launch of this game and the controversy that it caused, a segue. That's where you're meant to talk, Matthew.
Yeah, sorry. Right. So, yeah, the main feature today, we're just talking about big video game-based controversies. Real blotches on the history of video games that kind of have thrown everything into a bad light. So we're going to start.
There's been a few.
So we're going to start off talking about loot boxes. We touched on them as the whole kind of recent controversy came to a head last week. But I really wanted to kind of go into where they came from, sort of what company. I mean, I could have guessed it was EA. Without much thought, I could have guessed it was EA. But I wanted to see sort of which companies, which games were responsible for sort of making them mainstream. And actually thinking about it, probably the earliest example of loot boxes, because the main controversy is that they're being pushed towards children. I read an article that pointed out that trading cards have always been a thing, and that could be considered loot boxing in its very earliest form, because they work on exactly the same principle. You have like a sealed packet of trading cards, and you say, "Hey, you pay." I forget how much they were. You pay
a packet of 9 Yu-Gi-Oh cards was £3.50 in my local Woolworths.
Yeah, there you go. God, Woolworths. That's a throwback only British people will get. So you get like a pack of, like you say, 9 cards. You say, hey, you pay £3.50. You might get Red Eyes. You're probably going to get 2 Enraged Backlashes and a Trap Hole, but you could get Red Eyes. And that kind of, that kind of risk and reward, like enticing someone with what they could get and glossing over what they're probably going to get. So arguably that has always been integrated into sort of child culture, I suppose. The label for it is that you sort of you sort of get. I lost my train of thought. This is going to need editing.
Yeah, that's all right. I will say though, those cards were worth it because, as I told Matthew earlier, when I was about 13, obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh. 10 years later, still am. But I bought a booster pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards and got myself the Obelisk the Tormentor, and 14-year-old Ollie was crazy back then. So I'm in favour of this.
Yeah, are they inherently bad? No, I guess not. Collections have always been a thing. Even before Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, you like Panini sticker collections.
Football stickers have been around since the dawn of time.
Exactly, and they operate under exactly the same principle. You could get what you need, but the chances are so small, but we're going to gloss over that.
And it wasn't my money, it was my parents', so I didn't care.
I looked into the first instance of this sort of system being incorporated into a video game, There's the first actual instance is in 2006, an Asian game called ZT Online. It had what it called at the time virtual gachas. Now, again, if you've ever been to like a family restaurant and you see the machines with little plastic containers in them, and you put like £1 in and twist a little wheel, and then one of those containers will fall out. That's a gacha machine. Wait, Ollie, do you know what I'm on about? Or am I...
Oh yeah, I've wasted many a £1 coin at the beach on those.
Yeah. So that's what they were named after in their first appearance in Japan. And these were ridiculously profitable. So 2007 saw the first instance of a system like this in a football game. It was actually not EA, as far as I'm aware.
Was it
I'm
PES?
gonna just do some...
Don't tell me it was PES.
It's going to need some more editing.
I'm talking, I'm singing, yeah. Matt's doing the Google. Matt is doing the Google while I sing.
Oh, I take that back. It was EA.
Oh.
Goddamn fucking yeah. So the first instance of them in a football game was the UEFA Champions League game for the 2006-2007 season. It was the first appearance of Ultimate Team,
so this was a
widely
FIFA
controversial series. Basically, yes, it was the Champions League game for 2006.
Okay, can we back up 1 second? I know this is completely off topic, but so EA released FIFA, which has in the career mode a Champions League competition, and then released the Champions League game alongside of it.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they've been releasing FIFA since God knows when, 98, I guess.
I have the first one on my SNES. It's brilliant.
So yeah, for all the lauding people do of EA were actually the company that bought the idea of loot boxes, this kind of monetary input for in-game advantages, to Europe, I suppose.
It's nice to know that EA have always been money hungry. Actually, well, I suppose The Sims was the start of their downfall, wasn't it?
Yeah, with its 7,000 add-on packs, to the point that it's actually confusing to look into what you want to buy. There's like countless spreadsheets that people have had to make to work out what pack comes with what rewards. You know, they had to do the same with Watch Dogs, incidentally. So I've got next. I've just got 2009, and then EA with a sad face.
You're going to see a pattern here.
That's when they came into their own with it a bit, I think. FIFA 2009 was the first proper incorporation of Ultimate Team. And I think by that point we were on to PS3. So then they started introducing microtransactions. So paying real money for in-game currency, which you could then use to buy these packs. They also did the same thing with Madden 2010. Came out, I think, in the same year. And this is where it gets a bit dodgy, because this is where you could this is the beginning of actually being able to buy currency that boosted your progress. I'm not sure about the UEFA Champions League one, but this is the first example of actually being able to use real money to boost your progress and give you actual advantages over other players in the Ultimate Team mode.
It's quite confusing, well, not confusing, but interesting that it started on FIFA and not Madden, because you can't imagine that FIFA has much, saleability, is that a word? I don't know. In North America, where football is a game where you throw an egg at each other.
I mean, let's avoid making sweeping statements about nationally beloved sports here, Ollie. We're here to bash EA.
Yeah, but it's not football, because you don't use your foot and it's not a ball. Okay, but we'll just forget about that. But
all right, I feel like I've accidentally unearthed something here.
But my point still stands. You think this would be something they try out with a? I'm guessing. I mean, this is all conjecture. I haven't looked it up. But Madden outsells FIFA, because FIFA, on population alone, it must do. Matt's Googling this. I'm not going to sing this time. I'm going to save you guys from that one. But, I mean...
No, you're editing that out, surely.
I don't know, maybe. Depends how much time I've got before the kickoff tonight.
No, 100% you are editing that shit out.
It's got to go live tomorrow, Matthew. And people like our personalities. They don't like the information.
It's not personality, it's just being noisy. Oh, wow, yeah, Madden... I haven't got figures here, but certainly... Okay, so until very recently, Madden absolutely outsold FIFA.
I suppose football is taking off in North America now as well, isn't it? Now that then.
Well, that's the thing. FIFA is becoming more and more a mainstream game. People that don't even like football own it. Madden, I feel like you have to have an inherent understanding of NFL.
Oh yeah, I've tried to play a Madden demo before because it was free on the Xbox Marketplace, and my god, it's confusing.
Yeah.
At least with FIFA, you get the ball and you run to the other end of the pitch, and that's kind of all you have to do.
So the next instance, anyone who had Facebook in the 2010s will remember Farmville.
Oh god.
I think everyone played this at some point. Everyone who had Facebook.
I didn't. I've never played Farmville, or I got invited to it by about 600 of my Facebook friends, but never once played it.
So again, this is Facebook introduced Facebook Credit, where you could buy Facebook credits and then use those to buy in-game purchases for these different Facebook games. It doesn't sound like a game about farming would make that much money, but I think at its peak, Zynga, the company that owns Farmville, was turning in something like $250 million every quarter.
So $1 billion a year.
Which is just an insane amount of money.
That's ridiculous.
That was the first sign that these things are successful. These things bring in money, and there's no limit to how much money they can bring in. And I think that's why they're so popular with developers and publishers, because there is technically no limit to the money they can make. Whereas before microtransactions, before loot boxes, you could just buy a game and own it. And that was it. That was the extent of your monetary contribution.
Oh, how times have changed.
Yeah, absolutely how times have changed.
I'm just realising while we're recording this episode that this episode will be the single reason why me and Matt never get a sponsorship deal from a mobile game.
Yeah, I think so.
We're just going to be slagging them off for half an hour.
Yeah. So, following Zynga, obviously, so began the rise of mobile gaming.
Segue again.
It's not really a segue.
Hey, I'm on 4 now. You're not taking this away from me.
Your Candy Crushes, your and your countless knockoffs for such. Your Angry Birds.
Doodle Jump.
Well,
that's an old one.
That is an old one. But these, I think Farmville was something of the rise. It signalled the rise of games with these micropayments bolted on. So they weren't being incorporated into a game's design yet. I don't think that certainly happened at some stage before then. So in 2010 we had Team Fortress 2. It was previously a free game. It previously cost money, but it switched to being free and instead incorporated cosmetic-only loot boxes.
That was a risk.
So dressing up costumes. Gabe Newell said it was a risk, but it actually pentupled Team Fortress 2's player base in a single year. So there were 5 times as many people playing it. And it made ridiculous amounts of money.
So we can blame all of this on Gabe Newell?
No, because Gabe Newell's a saint. He's still held in such high esteem in the internet despite having done nothing of consequence since Half-Life 2.
Well, he made Portal, didn't he?
He made what?
Portal and Portal 2.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, the Half-Life Portal.
Left 4 Dead, sort of.
Well, back when Valve made games and didn't just sit on its money pile and watch as Steam collapsed into a mess.
But that's another rant for another time.
I think so. So then we move on to EA as they began taking up the mobile practice of just bolting these things onto the side of their games. So we had games, Mass Effect 3, Dead Space 3, these kind of single-player games, like franchises built on single-player experience, suddenly having multiplayer modes. And it all feels like it's for the purpose of these micropayments. It just feels like it's there as a kind of, oh, hey, give us some more money.
Did you ever play the Mass Effect online? Because I didn't.
I did not. I've only recently gone back to Mass Effect 3, because I never actually finished it. I was so disgusted that it made me, without going into too much detail about how the game ended, to get the best ending, you had to do a certain amount of online play. And,
for God's sake.
And complete certain objectives, and then download a mobile app as well. I was so disgusted with that I just walked away from it. I'm kind of pretending that my universe turned out great and everyone's sat down having a picnic on an Earth that's not been overrun by Reapers.
We can't believe that now because Andromeda was a thing.
Andromeda was a thing. That's the best word for it, a thing.
It happened.
So Mass Effect's introduction of these loot systems wasn't actually received that badly. Dead Space 3's was. Dead Space.
That's because that wasn't a good game. Mass Effect 3 had a terrible ending, but overall the gameplay and the storyline were well received.
I think the gameplay was at its best in Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, but I'd say until Andromeda came along. But Dead Space 3 is regarded as a massive step down. I've never played any of the Dead Space games, but I've seen enough reviews to know that people do not like Dead Space 3.
No, sure.
So you add this on top of that, and it's just another thing to hate. Yeah. Whereas in Mass Effect, it's like, okay, it's got something bad, but we'll look over that.
Yeah. So another game to talk about is Overwatch, Blizzard's biggest online game. I've never played it. I know that it made, in its first year, it made $1 billion in micropayments for loot boxes. Again, hiding behind the cosmetic-only excuse. It doesn't make these things less predatory. If you're still pushing the potential rewards in the face of the consumer, you're still encouraging them to pay money. That's the idea behind this. It's not what you get, it's the fact that you're making us feel like we're missing out. For not paying for these things. But again, $1 billion is a lot of money. There's people obviously were going for them. It's worth talking about Shadow of War as well, the sequel to Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor by Monolith. Again, predominantly single-player game, but they inserted microtransactions and loot boxes and it tried to incorporate them into single-player gameplay. Now this was the first instance we'd seen of a system like this being introduced into single-player. Obviously, removing the online component from it, you're being paid. You're being made to feel like you're like you need to pay more money to play the game on your own. Which is probably the most disgusting example.
Oh God, yeah. Especially because when the game costs like £60 to buy.
Yeah.
In the first place, that's something else we should mention. Is it's not like the prices of video games have been going down in exchange for all these microtransactions. The prices of video games have nearly doubled in the last 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And they added a weird kind of... Now, anyone who's seen the Shadow of War memes will know about this guy. I haven't played the game and I know about this guy. There's a merchant orc that's at the store place when you're buying loot boxes. And when you buy one, he will kind of... There's one animation that plays where he sort of grins and rubs his hands together, which is deliciously ironic. I don't think Monolith realised quite what they'd done when they did that, because obviously with the introduction of these bashful micropayment systems, That's exactly what people think of the studio now, which is beautiful. It's actually relevant because as of today, as we record this, the 8th of May, they're actually having... Monolith are actually removing all of the microtransactions from Shadow of War. They're completely reverting the system back.
Hey, a bit of positivity.
The problem is it's quite late on. If it truly was out of goodwill, it wouldn't have been done just now. They'd have done it earlier on in the game's life. The cynic in me thinks it's because it stopped making as much money, and they figured they could get some sort of publicity stunt out of it.
Well, saying about that, I've just had a look, and Shadow of War sales were 42% less than Shadow of Mordor.
Yeah, and that's probably bad publicity more than anything.
Yeah, because they spent more money on marketing for this game, so it had a bigger campaign.
And it's such a shame because Shadow of Mordor was such a good game. The Nemesis system was just
brilliant idea.
Such a revolutionary idea for single player gameplay.
Made the world far more immersive.
And that's what they're hiding behind. They're saying that they're getting rid of the micropayments to enhance the Nemesis engine, like the experience that it provides for the single player game. The simple response to that is, well, why were they there in the first place? You're saying that you put them there deliberately trying to inhibit single player gameplay. But there we go. That's Shadow of War. Like I say, they've been removed now. Another game with predatory, horrible loot box systems that completely destroyed the game. And now I'm going to steal Ollie's catchphrase here. Segue.
Yeah.
Star Wars Battlefront 2. Oh boy, this game went down very badly when it came out.
Is it still the most downvoted thing in Reddit history?
So yes, EA made a post trying to defend it. It was quite a pathetic post on Reddit, which now stands as the most downvoted post in Reddit history. It's something like 600,000 people downvoted it, which obviously for somewhere like Reddit is basically unheard of.
Which shows how many people were crying out for this game to be good.
So it's so Battlefront's microtransactions actively offered gameplay advantages for sale. They actually offered items that you had to unlock through progression as a potential reward for these loot boxes, basically as a time skip. It's the most predatory example, and predatory really is the word for it, because to start with, the game was built around these microtransactions. It's the first real horrible example of a game being built around these payments. Obviously the rest of the game being such a kind of a grind fest to unlock everything else. Or hey, you pump £20 in, you might get a stat card for Darth Vader. You probably won't. You'll probably get hundreds of duplicates, and then we'll give you like 10 pence worth of microcurrency.
And this is such a shame, because when I bought Battlefront on its... no, not its release date, but I got it the same day I went to see The Last Jedi. So that wasn't a good day for Star Wars. But the reason this is such a shame is because Battlefront 2 is one of the finest first-person shooter experiences I've played in years. Online sense, not including solo, single-player stuff. But it was such a well-developed game, and you could tell it was made by true fans of the Star Wars franchise. And I don't know who the game developers are, but they really cared about this game, and they implemented all this amazing stuff and all these amazing gameplay features. And then EA came along and went, well, we can charge people for that. We'll rip that out and make you pay for it in DLC and all this other stuff. And it's such a shame, because I guarantee you this game would have made more money if it had none of that, because it is a quintessentially perfect Star Wars experience.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But like we covered last week, they've actually gone back on those now. All of the statistical advantage items have been removed from loot boxes. They're now served as cosmetics only. Not as bold a statement as I think it should have been. I think the boldest statement they could have made is just to get rid of them. However, I think they're so heavily incorporated into the reward system anyway, even with these updates. What I don't like about how they remove it is the same thing that Monolith are trying to do. They make it seem like it's a favour. They make it seem like they made these decisions and they're in the right for doing so, and we're in the wrong for doing so. For complaining about them rather, and
it's just disgraceful.
And they're kind of they're in all these statements. There's this kind of air of look at how great we are listening to our fans. It's like, no, the content is still there. You put these things there with the intention of milking us. So don't act like you're the good guys and we owe you respect because you've decided to stop doing that. You know, I hate this kind of this idea that we owe them one now, because they've gotten rid of these horrible systems.
Yeah.
I miss the days where you could buy a game and own it, you know. Which I guess brings us into what we covered last week. I won't go into too much detail about this. Obviously, the Belgian Gaming Commission found it analysed 4 examples of games. Counter-Strike Global Offensive, obviously with its skin purchasing and all of the various skin gambling sites there are. Star Wars Battlefront 2, Overwatch, and FIFA 18. Now it found 3 of the 4 of those games in violation of gambling legislation. Battlefront being the exception, following its recent updates. Could mean prison sentences if they're not rectified or are found to be in violation for the developers of these games. I think it's the introduction of these systems and their accessibility to children, I think, was the main controversy with these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at some of the games like FIFA and their age ratings like, what, 3?
So I'm hoping that this sort of ruling will lead to... I mean, I understand that there's some sort of need for these sort of systems. Well, not a need. I understand that they are the best way to make money. As I say, it removes the limit per customer on what a game can make. I just hope that the game we start to see the end of games being designed around them. I want to be able to play a game to completion without once having them pushed in my face. If they must be there. I'd rather they were only affected multiplayer experiences. I'd rather they didn't give actual gameplay advantages to people who put money into the game and make me feel like I'm losing out. I don't want to see Activision's patented system come into play. Activision have patented a system. I don't know if it's pending or approved or anything. But they've patented a system that will basically matchmake you online with people who have paid for skins that you have shown an interest in.
Oh, for God's sake.
It's predatory at its most kind of
ridiculous
fundamental level. It's trying to subconsciously manipulate you. I'll try that line again because I'm pretty sure I mispronounced that. It's trying to subconsciously manipulate you.
Nailed it.
Into... thanks, Ollie. Into... I'm just going to try it again. It's trying to subconsciously manipulate you into putting money into these games, which is, like I say, predatory at its most basic form. I don't know. I just hope they stay away from... I hope we don't see... I hope that loot boxes don't bring about the death of the single-player campaign. Obviously, with Activision coming out and announcing that Call of Duty isn't going to have a single-player campaign, the next one. Not that I care. I don't really play... Call of Duty games anymore, but the fact that they are flat out abandoning those of us seeking a single player experience is a sign of the times.
Well, I mean, look at the recent release of Far Cry 5, I mean, this is a personal gripe of mine, so it might cut into a bit of a rant, but the game has a multiplayer system where you can play it 2-player, but doesn't support split screen. That is the most annoying thing I've ever heard, because...
It's a shame. It's the death of couch co-op.
Yeah, it is. Although with that Prison Break game coming out, which requires split screen co-op, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it's still, that game was perfect. I would have loved to have played Far Cry on the sofa. You know?
Yeah. That's why I'm not against HD re-releases. Because I know what I'm getting.
Yeah.
It's you know, the remasters of games back when games were single player, back when micropayments weren't a thing.
It was just a
better
time.
You could buy a game and own said game, and that would be it.
And you unlocked things by completing the game, not paying for them.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not against these things, because I just think it's nice to play a game without being reminded that I could be paying for, I don't know, 3,000 Call of Duty points, or whatever it is they call them. They called them something similar to that in one of the entries, I think.
Although, how much do you want to bet that when the Spyro remaster comes out, you can pay to have different Spyro skins?
Oh yes. Ever wanted a black Spyro?
Or
no.
Pre-order bonus, get to play as Skylanders Spyro.
I actually remember. Oh God, who'd pay for that? I actually remember the original. I don't remember the other two games, but certainly Spyro 3 had cheat codes for making Spyro sort of different colours. You could make him 2D, which I always did, even though it meant that when he was walking straight ahead, you couldn't fucking see him.
Yeah, that's going to be paid for in the re-release.
It will be a massive shame, but unfortunately I couldn't put it past them anymore.
No. So I think we've talked about the Luke box controversy for long enough, so should we move on to our other gaming controversies?
I think we should.
I'm counting that as a segue.
Smaller, yeah.
I'm counting that one, so I'm up to 6.
If you want.
So it was a segue. Spyro 2 Mortal Kombat. Perfect.
So, have you ever played a game with an age rating?
No,
if you have, then Mortal Kombat... No. Alright, let's try that again. Ollie, have you ever played a game with an age rating?
No, my mum won't let me.
Ollie. Ollie.
Yeah?
Have you ever played a game with an age rating?
Yes, I've played Grand Theft Auto, but I wasn't allowed to.
There you go. You have Mortal Kombat to thank for that. So the original Mortal Kombat, the SNES and Genesis and arcade the arcade game ported to several different platforms, came out in 1992. It was a period where video games didn't have age restrictions. Nothing was regulated. There was no governing body to regulate what was okay to push towards kids and what wasn't. So
the Wild West of video games.
So I'm guessing everyone's heard of Mortal Kombat. It's a fairly kind of by the numbers arcade fighting game. You've got 2 players on either side of the screen. There's fighting moves. What really drew the game into the spotlight, and certainly the shit pit,
as you
was the inclusion of fatalities. So when you finish a fight, you input a certain button sequence, and you basically would execute your opponent by sort of the famous example. You would rip their head clean from their shoulders, and their spinal column would still be attached to it. This is a game that came out the same year as Super Mario Kart and Sonic 2. Nothing like this had ever really been seen. I guess the edgiest anyone had gone. I don't know if Wolfenstein was out around that time, the early Wolfenstein games. But nothing had ever been seen that was this gratuitous. And like I say, this having come out the same year as games like Sonic 2, the most kid-friendly game in the fucking world, this really kind of exploded.
Matt, Wolfenstein 3D was May 5th, 1992.
Well, there you go. So it's quite possible it came out in the same year. But nothing this gratuitous had come out before Mortal Kombat. This gratuitous and somewhat needless as well, actually. Mortal Kombat would have functioned fine without these finishing moves.
Is this the game where when they ported it to either the Genesis or the SNES that they turned the blood into sweat?
I was just going to go into that, actually. So Nintendo and Sega were both the big...
Oh, here we go, Matt. Mortal Kombat 3D was released the same year as Wolfenstein. No, Mortal Kombat 1 was released the same year as Wolfenstein 3D. So they probably both contributed to the legislation.
Well, Mortal Kombat's the one that's credited with it. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get the page up.
So yeah, on the... Was it the Sega Mega Drive or the SNES where they changed it?
It was both.
Was it?
Just give me 1 second and we will resume talking.
I should probably...
So, the two biggest... start again. I'll edit that whole chunk out. Incidentally, do you want me to edit this?
No, it's cool. I got it. I'll do it later on.
As long as you do sort of take all the... Because I'm very rambly today.
I'll take it out, don't worry.
So as long as you do.
I mean, in the Avengers Infinity War, I took out about 15 minutes of just you going,
Yeah, I do that.
In total, there was about 15 minutes of it, so I'm good at cutting the stuff out.
I apologise. Just the rambles and kind of, I'll give that another go.
Right, so we'll start again now.
Fuck, where were we?
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
No, it's alright, I got it. So, the two biggest ports of this arcade game were to the, obviously, Nintendo's SNES and the Sega Genesis.
Mega Drive for you Americans.
Mega Drive for you Americans, all maybe one or two of them that listen.
Yeah.
So both of these companies were basically commanded to edit this game extremely heavily. There were talks at Nintendo of turning the blood green.
What?
At one point. I don't quite know why that was but that was suggested to the team overseeing the porting of the game. They didn't go for that, needless to say. So they altered most of the fatalities for the SNES in ways that made them less gratuitous without sort of ruining their impact, I suppose. Certain background assets were removed, and the biggest change is no blood. Blood was completely removed from the SNES release of the game. As it appeared to be in the Genesis release, but there was Sega actually included a cheat code to get it past face level critics, I suppose. Introduced a cheat code that enabled the blood and all the gratuitous gore and everything.
I imagine that week's issue of Gaming Magazine, or whatever it's called, was the biggest selling of all time.
So it goes without saying that despite the fact that everyone seemed to hate the fact that there was a game with blood in it, the Genesis version outsold the SNES version by 5 copies to 1. Unfortunately, these sort of controversies, and that will be the general theme, is that these sort of controversies tend to sell.
Yes.
Well, disappointingly.
Well, it's there's no such thing as bad publicity, is there?
No, of course. And these games being Mortal Kombat trying to sell itself on its publicity. Unfortunately, it was drawn to the attention of a US senator at the time. One of his workers' children wanted the game, so they went to him, and he took it to the senator. I'll just double check his name.
Have you written it down? No. Is it Lieberman?
Hang on. I've got to find his first name. There we go. Senator Joe Lieberman was his name, and he basically called a subcommittee on this. that's how big it got. He dragged the whole US government into this, basically put Mortal Kombat before them and said, why is this going without regulation? Why are kids technically allowed to play this? Was it truly to protect children at the time, or were the regulations in place good enough? And it was he basically using Mortal Kombat as a scapegoat for something that was starting to evolve and change in ways that he wasn't comfortable with? I don't know. But that subcommittee eventually it called Nintendo and Sega into Congress and told them to start self-regulating, or they would have to be state-regulated. And that is how the ESRB came to be. Because Sub-Zero pulls some guy's head off sometimes. So yeah, that's the ESRB came about because of a controversy, because of probably the most violent video game series, and it's a sign of the times that something, kind of 64-bit head pulling got that much attention, and nowadays Mortal Kombat X is out. You can watch people like punch holes through people's chests and then slice their faces off, and you get to watch what's left of their brain fall out of their face. That sort of thing goes relatively unchecked nowadays is a hilarious sign of the times, I think.
Well, you can just slap an 18 age rating on it and get away with most things in video games these days, can't you?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate truth of it, I think.
A similar thing was forced on Mortal Kombat when they did a crossover with DC.
Yes, any fan of the Mortal Kombat universe will know about this game. I hesitate to say fondly remember, because it went down not brilliantly.
No.
It was always going to be a problem introducing these guys who are famous for the way they kill people and pitting them against people that are intellectually unable to kill people.
Yeah. Although this game did give birth to the Injustice universe, which is a pretty good child from it.
Yes, but it was... people were so disappointed with how kind of flat the violence was in Mortal Kombat, because that's become Mortal Kombat's gimmick.
Oh, yeah.
The over-the-top violence. Which makes sense, when it was given that much attention because of its violence, and only because of its violence, because let's face it, arguably excluding the newest release, they've never been the best fighting games.
No.
They've always been eclipsed by sort of the earlier Tekkens and Street Fighter especially.
Well, Street Fighter 2 was so far ahead of Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, absolutely. And only in its most recent release can it even be considered to be the best fighting game mechanic.
And
system.
And you can argue that's because Street Fighter and Tekken have both fallen by the wayside.
Yes. With the Street Fighter 5 coming out and basically being Street Fighter 4.5 because it wasn't really finished.
It's the reason Mortal Kombat is doing so well at the moment is because there's nothing else like it on the market. I mean, Injustice is similar.
It stands alone.
Yeah.
Injustice is similar, but it's also made by the same people.
Yeah.
So its only competitor is itself.
But so I mean, we've now spoken about Mortal Kombat, which was I'd say the world's first gaming controversy, so we'll quickly move on to one of the most recent, because reasons, and that was the release.
These segues are getting very weak.
I'm counting it. That's how I'm on 7. I mean, here we go. Should we try this? We've just spoken about Mortal Kombat, where there's no sky. So now we seemingly have to talk about No Man's Sky.
I mean, what, we're sticking with that?
Yeah, we're sticking with it.
Sure, we're sticking with it. Okay. So No Man's Sky. You'd have had to be hiding under a rock not to have heard about this one by now. It was announced in 2013. It just got it was swept up under a wave of publicity.
Yeah.
Something that we'd never seen for a game of its scale. We'd never seen an independently developed game be carried like this. Sony eventually picked it up, as Sony were the ones publicising it.
It was the biggest hype train for a video game I've ever seen.
I don't think it's ever been surpassed.
It was just
not by anything. It's crazy.
I'm pretty sure like this is one of the only video games where it's appeared on talk shows like Graham Norton. They talked about this game, and that is far beyond the realm of where most video game players will watch.
Absolutely. It's such a mainstream audience for something that's actually quite niche.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I mean, I was about to try and list off a list of things that were promised during this game's hype, but what wasn't promised? What didn't Sean Murray promise?
Well, he said he was giving us a virtual universe.
A virtual universe consisting of 18 quintillion planets, a completely procedural world. So chances are you discover a planet and you'd be the first person to find it. He said there were MMO elements to it. You could interact with other players somewhat. He said there were space battles and 3 factions that were constantly at war, and there'd be dynamic choices that affected the whole universe.
It was none of these things.
Its initial release date was June 2016, but it was delayed again. It was delayed initially, and then announced for June 2016, and then delayed to August eventually. Some copies actually came out. Some leaked copies came out on Reddit. No, hang on.
He's doing his Google.
More cutting required here.
Yeah.
More cutting required here because I've lost my train of thought again. Don't like recording this late.
No,
I'm starting to fall apart a bit.
I've been editing videos for like 4 hours before we started, so I'm done staring at a computer screen.
There were posts on Reddit just before the game launched of people who somehow got their hands on cracked copies of the game. And those were the real first signs that things were going to go quite badly. Apparently, the actual game was a shadow of the promotional material. Apparently, it was buggy. It crashed often. There was nothing to do. But it sold very, very well based on the hype train, I think.
Yeah.
No Man's Sky sold extremely well, and those early fears were realised. The problem with promising 18 quintillion planets is that you've got to make sure there's something to do on every single one, and that there's reason to explore them all. It felt like, rather than a game that was developed, an open world game where you could make what you wanted of it, it feels like we were just given a world, and not so much left to do what we want with it, because there wasn't really anything to do. Fuck's sake. Sorry about this. You're going to have to do so much editing.
Oh, well, the problem with this game was, although it was overly hyped and overly promised, the bare bones of what we were told we were going to get, we did get. And as a proof of concept indie game, this would have been amazing. The problem was it got taken over by its own hype, which is partially to do with the developer's fault and partially our fault for hyping this game so much. And also the price tag. If this game had come out and was like 10-15 quid like your standard indie game, no one would have cared. This would have just been another indie game that was kind of cool. It was a
cool concept,
yeah,
poorly executed.
Yeah,
but this thing, they wanted AAA prices. I think pre-order price was £50.
I paid 50 quid for it.
Just way too much money for something that wasn't finished.
No.
So many updates followed to not so much to add content as to get the game working. The problem is we've never seen an indie game get coverage like this, especially not. It was picked up by Sony, one of the big three gaming companies.
Oh yeah, that was.
It was, and to have a game developed by a team of 16. Let's not forget, Hello Games has 16 employees. And to develop a game that was thrust this forcefully into the spotlight, maybe absolves them of some of the blame, because we were. It's like you say, part of the blame has to fall on us, I think.
Yeah.
For expecting so much from it, but I think quantitatively, Sean Murray lied.
Oh God, he
about
lied.
This game. As it turns out, all of the things he promised were sort of his promises were not realised in the final version of this game. The wonderful gameplay trailers that we'd seen were faked. It was just somebody sat holding a controller while a pre-edited video plays. The touted crafting system was nothing more than busy work.
And all that was in the game.
My favourite example, you travel these diverse worlds, you find all of this diverse wildlife. Every single living thing gives you carbon, and that is it. Obviously, that's changed as of an update, but we have to take the game as it launched.
My biggest problem with this game...
any diverse thing that you could find gave you carbon, which had no use, except it could be turned into something else, which had no use, except that it could be turned into something else that goes into your ship. That's not a crafting system, that is busy work. That's something stopping me from going out and enjoying this universe that you're trying to push at me.
I will say, one of the biggest problems I had with this game was if... I remember correctly, the day I bought it, you were at my house, and we were both playing it side by side. And it's, if you don't know, it's basically, it spawns you on a planet with a broken ship, and you have to fix your ship, and that's kind of the only mission in the game when it first launches. But my character got spawned on a planet which was within 5 feet of where my character spawned. There was just hundreds and hundreds of deposits of gold, which is the most valuable thing in the game on launch. So I ended up leaving the first planet with millions of in-game currency, and all of the fun, well, what little fun was actually in the game, was instantly taken away because I went to the nearest space station and bought the most expensive ship I could buy, flew back down to the same planet, filled it with gold, and all of the supposed, grinding and exploration that is needed to get these amazing ships and get these amazing upgrades for your ships was instantly gone for me because I spawned on the richest planet in the universe. That's
kind of with 18 quintillion planets, some of them are going to look similar. There was very little difference between most of the planets I visited. Everything just ended up being so inconsequential. The touted weather systems that would be, oh no, you need to run out the way of this acid rainstorm, essentially just ended up being go to a cave and get an element that's abundant on planets with acid rain and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
The ending is the most self-gratuitous thing I've ever seen. The aim of the game is to get to the center of this universe that they've built. But when you get to the center of the universe, you don't actually go to the center of the universe. It doesn't answer any questions about what's at the center of the universe. It just does a big zoom out on everything, as if to say, look at us, look at this great world that we've created for you. You could basically hear Sean Murray wanking himself off while this cutscene plays. It's the most kind of, here's what we've done, aren't you grateful for it moment. in the entire game.
It will probably go down as one of the most botched launches of a video game title in history.
Absolutely.
And rightly so.
And who's to blame for that? Is it Sean Murray? His yes man attitude didn't exactly help. There's video evidence. There's like 6 or 7 minute compilations of every single lie he told during the kind of hype train, about the sort of consequential choice systems, the MMO elements, the presentation in general. He's video evidence of him actually lying about them.
It was a huge mistake. Now, sorry about this, but we're kind of running a bit short on time, so we're gonna have to move on from this one to arguably the most controversial game in gaming history. There's been more complaints and more controversies around one series than any other, really, and that is Grand Theft Auto. And as much as I don't want to say that, guy, I mean, if any game was gonna pick up loads of controversy, it kind of needed to be this one.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's been a single entry in the series that hasn't put a foot out of line. So we have the first Grand Theft Auto being a top-down. I forget which platform it was released on.
I had it on PS1.
Yeah, but it was a top-down game. The first one where you could sort of run around and shoot and run over civilians. I guess Grand Theft Auto London's controversy was that it was shit.
Yeah.
I don't know much about the game. I've only seen the voice acting, and it's god awful.
Grand Theft Auto 2 was just more of the same with the first game. It was basically the same game.
Yeah. You had San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, drawing controversy from just all over the place. Mainly the infamous hot coffee mod. So there was a mod released shortly after the game, the Hot Coffee mod, that claimed to use newly built assets to enable sex scenes, essentially. What caused controversy about this is that these scenes were actually found in the game files, not just for the PC, but for the PS2 and Xbox releases as well.
We're going to have about 5 minutes of usable footage by the end of this.
I think so.
So we have the Hot Coffee mod where they used in-game assets to create a mini-game sex scene, which, I mean, they cut it from the game. Like, it's not... Like, if they'd left it in the game, the controversy around this, I mean, you could argue that it was an 18 in the first place, so, I mean, kids seeing this shouldn't be allowed, but you could...
Obviously, there's also the fact they left initial copies of the game actually had the assets left in, and technically using Game Sharks and exploders, these scenes could be these scenes could actually be accessed on the PS2 versions, and that's the controversy of this, is the fact that technically anyone could access them. I mean, by this point, people I think had accepted that age certificates didn't really work.
Oh no, they don't. You just have to be with someone over 18 to get the game.
It just means that mum and dad buy them for you.
If you've got cool parents.
Yeah. So, I've also got written down here GTA versus Australia. Australia is something of a nanny state when it comes to video games. The only entry to the series to not have been outright banned is Grand Theft Auto 2. So until 2013... I think it's 2013. The highest age certificate Australia would allow was a 15 plus, and their way of getting around controversial games was simply to refuse classification to anything higher than that. Although that's been changed, there are still games now, Saints Row 4 being one of the biggest examples of games that are still refused classification. These games required... GTA, any games that were allowed classification had to be extremely heavily edited. Grand Theft Auto 4 being a big example there. Another issue with GTA, none of the other games one of the other games we're going to mention, actually have murders attributed to them. Now, this is a very dicey subject. We're going to try and be careful when talking about this. So there have been 10 recorded murders where the killers have gone on record as claiming that they were inspired in some form by Grand Theft Auto games, the activities that they performed in a GTA game. There's an example of this, quite a horrible, tragic example. There's an 8-year-old child intentionally shooting his 87-year-old grandmother with like a .37 caliber firearm, and GTA was blamed for that. I don't. Maybe it's a combination of GTA. It's impossible to outright discredit it, especially with the fact that there was a murder involved. But I think it's a combination of what was an 8-year-old child doing playing GTA with what was an 8-year-old child doing in access to a .37 caliber pistol. Let's not go too heavily into gun control laws right now, but
right now we're going to talk about it later
on. Right now, but for an 8-year-old child to have unrestricted access to a firearm that he can go and just pick it up and murder somebody with it, is I think more the issue here. There wouldn't be these issues with people being inspired by GTA if these things weren't accessible, you know.
But we're not talking about that.
Right.
And bring on the favourite person in the world in video games, Mr. Jack Thompson.
Oh, Jack Thompson. So this
scumbag.
He's probably the most famous video game. Let's not say video game critic. Let's
Nazi?
say advocate for the total and utter illegalization of video games. If you think this guy's a good person and a noble person, he's gone on record as writing to Take-Two, the parent company of Rockstar, basically laughing in their faces because there's a scene in Bully or Canis Canem Edit, depending on where you are, where the main character Jimmy Hopkins can kiss a guy. So he basically wrote to Take-Two and said, and I think I'm quoting directly here, no. Here, so he's gone on record in a letter he wrote to the president at the time of the ESRB, is saying, "We just found gay sexual content in Bully, as Jimmy Hopkins makes out with another male student. Good luck with your teen rating now." That's in case you think that Jack Thompson's intentions are somewhat noble. That should serve as a testament to the fact that they are.
This is a man with a personal vendetta.
So he has been disbarred now as an attorney, but he served as a lawyer in one of the first GTA murder cases. So these murders attributed to GTA, with GTA touted as an inspiration for them. He's since gone on to, I guess it's fair to say, go after various other GTA games, notably Grand Theft Auto. Was it Vice City?
Which one?
3.
One of
the Grand Theft Auto games. The issue he drew with it is that you could pay a prostitute for sex, kill her, and take the money.
Oh, that was Grand Theft Auto 3.
It was Grand Theft Auto 3. That was the one that he infamously complained about. Little side note, I think it's funny, he tried to sue Midway Games, who at the time oversaw Mortal Kombat, because one of the games, Mortal Kombat Armageddon, included a create a fighter option, and you could use the options to make a character that was the exact spitting image of Jack Thompson, which I think was extremely funny. He sent a cease and desist letter to Midway Games, and they essentially ignored it because how on earth was he going to prove that it was him?
Very similar to the Lindsay Lohan GTA, everything like that, yeah.
So I think we're basically scratching the surface with GTA. It's an episode on its own.
You've got Trevor's torture scene. You've got the constant just gratuitous violence that you can just run down people in the street. You can drink drive. You can. I think the biggest controversy in GTA of all time, though, is the fact that you couldn't kill Roman.
Yes,
you could have him killed.
You could have him killed. You couldn't kill him for asking about bowling.
I mean,
and that is the biggest injustice of all. Unfortunately, we're only talking briefly about GTA.
We're already recording way too long.
Just because it's so much to go into in a
and we've still got like 3 stories still to cover. So the next one we're talking about is, I'd probably say one of the largest publicised controversies of a video game, and it's one where I kind of agree with the people that didn't like it. And that was in Modern Warfare 2, there was the infamous level, No Russian, where you are undercover in a Russian terrorist organisation, and the sole purpose of the mission is to just kill as many people as possible. It's not. I completely agree with all the backlash that this one got. I mean, I understand that it's a free speech medium, and you should be able to say what you want, but a level like this in one of the biggest selling game franchises of all time was, I believe, a misstep by the developer.
So it made. Although you could do these things in sandbox games, sort of more open world games, this was the first instance we'd seen where essentially terrorism was made the objective. This was the first instance we'd seen where you would fail a mission for not being a terrorist.
It was just a bad choice.
So there are people who defend its inclusion as an expression of art. Could video games be art? Could video games be evocative? I would say not in this instance, because there's an ability to skip the mission entirely. If it's going to evoke thoughts that are important to the rest of the happenings in the game, then why can you skip it? It can't have that much of an impact. B, it's just kind of, it's glossed over. It happens and then you move on, and there's no real kind of, it doesn't, considering what you're doing, outside of the mission, it doesn't seem that what you've done has any impact. It's kind of handled very clumsily. If you want to see, can military shooters be evocative and thought-provoking? Yes. Look at Spec Ops: The Line. That's probably the best example of a shooter that provokes feelings other than there's the insurgents, kill, die. It combats PTSD. It combats civilian casualties. You do this horrible thing in Modern Warfare, and then you just carry on running around shooting everything. It doesn't have the impact that it thinks it does. It's an impact. It's rather than an impact on the game, it has an impact of tastelessness.
It was like the game was trying to be controversial.
Yeah, and again, there was an attack in Oslo in Norway a few years ago. There was a van bomb, and then a mass shooting that the killer attributed to this mission. So arguably, it didn't actually do anything positive.
No, this was a. They tried something, they mishandled it, and it came across as very disrespectful. to try and lighten this disgusting mood, me and Matt found out that this game, or this level, had the funniest mistranslation in the Japanese release of the game, which was, instead of no Russian, it was called Kill Them, They Are Russian.
Just completely misses
So we're trying
the point,
to,
doesn't
and
it?
also in the Japanese release of the game, if you shoot a civilian, it restarts the level. It's
Well, there you go. So that's the entire impact of the mission. Completely ripped away. Because it no longer makes sense in the context of the story if you don't shoot civilians. A controversy for controversy's sake. I think every Call of Duty since has had a shocking moment. Since then, there's been sort of fake video footage of a family being car bombed. I think in later entries, I think the Eiffel Tower is blown up at some point in Call of Duty. Oh, that might be Battlefield. I don't know. They're both the same game in my head. It's token is what it is. And while I'm not against video games being a form of art,
no, this was like terrible. But we're going to move on now, and now is my moment to shine, because Matthew has led most of this episode, as you've probably gathered if you've tuned in for an hour and 20 minutes or whatever it is after I edit this down. But this is the one that I wanted to talk about, and that is Fallout 3. Now, I'm a massive Fallout fan. The original games were amazing, and I still play them to this day, and New Vegas is... I'd go as far as saying one of the greatest video games ever made. But in between that, Bethesda bought it, and they made Fallout 3, which... I mean, I could do a whole episode on why this is just the worst thing that could have happened to the Fallout franchise ever. Until Fallout 4 came along. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that after you pay 40, 50 quid for this abomination of a Fallout game, you then get to the ending, and spoiler alert, I'm going to give you like a couple of seconds as I talk here, just so you can skip forward if you want to, yada yada yada. You die. The end of the game is there is a room filled with radiation, and in that room there is a switch to turn on a water purification plant that will give fresh water to all the people in the wasteland. And you have to go in and switch it on. The game ends, you sacrifice yourself, yada yada yada, completely ignoring the fact that in this game you can have both a ghoul and a super mutant as companions, both of which are completely immune to radiation, but will not go into the room for you because it's your big moment. Genuine quote as to what they say is, "You have to do this. It's not my place to switch this on." So the game ends, you die, everyone hated it. This was universally panned by the critics, but Bethesda had an answer for this, and they released that this wasn't the ending of the game, and if you wanted the true ending of the game, you had to fork out a further £10 or $15, depending on where you bought it, to get the final mission of the game. This was horrible. I mean, to release we've talked about having games where you can pay to have an advantage in the game, but I feel like this is one of the only instances in history where they make you pay more money to actually finish it. Matthew?
Hello, sorry, I wasn't really listening, to be honest.
Any thoughts on Fallout making you pay for the ending?
Obviously, having never played the game, I don't feel as though I can comment properly on it. I mean, it's generally a shitty practice. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. Getting someone invested in a story to the point that they will pay for the ending, especially because they didn't actually prioritise the ending. I don't think the ending was the first bit of DLC to come out.
4.
Which is a baffling decision to me.
And it's not like they'd, they realised that the ending was not what people wanted, and then they quickly made a DLC, because this came out 4 months after the game's initial release. So there's no way they could have made it from scratch because of the backlash about this game. They took the game, they cut the end off, and went, we'll get some more money for this. And that is despicable. But judging by the path that Bethesda Game Studios have taken since then, this should have been a very early warning sign. I mean, a couple of years before, or maybe only a year before, we'd had the famous Oblivion Horse Armor DLC. Then we had this, which, I mean, I might be letting my personal hatred for what Bethesda have done to the Fallout franchise make me seem more negative about this game or this controversy than it actually is, but I'm going to allow that because I really, really hate what they've done with my favourite video game franchise. But then they've also... This was not a one-off because they've continued it, and we're now moving into our final controversial story. We're finally nearly at the end, guys. And that is Skyrim, which... that's
which
the point.
One? You can no longer say which Skyrim. So we wanted to just touch very briefly on the practice that Bethesda seem to have taken up of just finding a good thing and repeatedly giving us that thing over and over again with a new gimmick. So as of recording, let's look up how many versions
I've got that
Skyrim
here. We have the original,
have you?
the Game of the Year edition, the Switch, the Special Edition, the VR, and I've put here Lego and fucking Pog, but I don't think those actually exist. And we've also had the Minecraft Skyrim, but we didn't know if that was actually Bethesda or what's the company that makes Minecraft? It's like Mojang or something, isn't it? Yeah,
Mojang.
We didn't know if they'd done it or Bethesda had done it, so we didn't know if we'd mentioned that one. But
I guess we can discredit the Legendary Edition based on the fact that most games bundle all their games with all the DLC.
So we've had 4 re-releases of Skyrim, which is probably the most re-releases a game has ever had, and this is a game that is not even 10 years old yet.
Yeah, that's the main thing about this, is that this game is not that old.
And
each re-release had a slight gimmick. So you had the base game, the Legendary Edition, which was on the next generation of consoles, the PS4, the Xbox One, and B was optimized better for PC. But obviously they bundled it with all the Creation Club bollocks, which is another issue.
Mods!
You had the Switch.
I'd say that's more of a port than anything.
The
which
Switch
is fair
port,
enough.
Which is just Skyrim on the go, which I'm not against inherently as a concept, but before you port a game to a console, you better make sure it fucking works, because it didn't. Realistically, it didn't run anywhere near as well as its console counterparts. Which, should we expect that from a Switch? I mean, no, we shouldn't expect that from a Switch, because if you're going to port a game, make sure it's optimized. Make sure you're maximizing the experience that someone's going to get from it.
Have Bethesda ever released a game that ran very well?
No, that's true. They're explorative but never immersive. I think that's the best way I've ever heard them described.
But it's milking a dead horse, isn't it? Really, is that the right word? Right phrase?
I think so.
Beating a dead horse.
I think you've confused idioms with necrophilia, I think there.
Well, that's just a regular Sunday afternoon for me.
Sure.
But it's just the since the original release of Skyrim, we've had 4 re-releases of Skyrim, and Bethesda Studios have released 1 game in that time. That's not a good record for a games company. Just pumping out the same game over and over and over again. Like, we're probably going to get a re-release of Fallout 3 at some point. We're probably going to get, I reckon there'll be a special edition HD remaster of Morrowind and Oblivion. They won't touch New Vegas because they don't like the fact that someone else made a better game than them, and they've just kind of brushed it under the table.
Yeah.
But it's not a good trend, and there's been no word on the next installment in the Elder Scrolls series, so we're going to be getting Skyrim re-releases for the next 10 years.
And as I said earlier, I'm not against remasters. actual rebuildings of games. On reflection, the special edition wasn't that. It was just God Ray lighting. And
yeah,
mods.
that's the thing, is you could make your original copy of Skyrim look better than the special edition with mods.
Exactly, and it's actually compatible with them as well. The special edition, they're trying to streamline mods through the Creation Club and their in-game mod support, and that inherently makes it a worse experience, I think.
It's not been a good couple of years for Bethesda.
No, I used to be happy when I saw Todd Howard. I think now I just see him as
I see him as almost the human embodiment of EA at the moment.
I think so. It's EA on a large scale. It's EA but with whole games. I think.
I mean, look at the. I know this is completely like off topic, and we didn't pre-plan this, but look at the DLC they released for Fallout 4. It was just all stuff for the workshop, basic. I mean, we got 2 proper DLCs, but
and admittedly, pretty good ones. Nuka World especially was amazing, but when you promise 6 DLC packs from the get-go and then 4 of them end up as weak as that,
stuff packs.
There's a couple. So I was the I bought the I actually own the season pass, and there's at least 2 DLCs I have never used anything.
Matt, I pre-ordered the Pip-Boy edition of Fallout 4.
So well, that's
it really was. Then, I was expecting that game to be amazing, but it wasn't. And the stuff pack DLC isn't the worst thing in the world, but all the way through the marketing of Fallout, I love how this has turned into a Fallout 4 rant now. The marketing of Fallout 4, Todd Howard said over and over and over again that the crafting base building mechanic was 100% optional. And then for you to basically solely focus your DLC releases on that alienates half your player base that aren't interested in that side of the game.
And there's the inherent problem of, hey player, here's a massive open world for you to explore. However, I'm going to make it seem necessary, nay, essential for you to stay in the top left corner of the map for the first 4 hours building houses.
We could do an episode on Fallout 4.
I think a lot of these episodes just turn out to us as us just going, hey, here's something we need to talk about.
We've got so many ideas, and in about 100 episodes we'll probably be going like, what can we talk about?
Yeah, hey guys, Todd Howard bought some new shoes.
And we're going to assess them. He's a size 9, did you know? So that's all of our gaming controversies. Before we sign off, while we've been recording, we've had some news that nearly made me squeal as I was reading it while Matt was talking. And that is, we have a official announcement of Bill and Ted 3. A quote from the I can't read. I've lost the page now, but essentially it's definitely happening. It has a name, I think. Bill and Ted Face the Music. Doesn't have a release date yet, but it's happening. We are having Bill and Ted 3. Now, I will say that Bill and Ted was one of my favourite movies as I was a kid, and to this day will argue with anyone that it's Keanu Reeves' best role, John Wick included. And I'm just brilliant excited like this because it's going to be really funny revisiting these characters like 20 years later when they're both just old men. Any thoughts, Matt, or are you not a fan of the Bill and Ted series?
I was hoping you'd avoid me because I'm ashamed to say I haven't actually heard of Bill and Ted before. It must be good if you're comparing it to John Wick. It's
nothing like that.
It's not comparable.
Basically, the basic premise is there's 2 students who have to write a history paper, and they don't know anything about history, so they get a time machine, which is
of course, yeah. 2 failing history students. That was what I tried when I was struggling with my GCSEs.
And they go through time and grab history's most famous figures, bring them back to the modern day to help them with their history presentation.
Right. I mean, I'm sold.
And then there's a sequel where they're in a band, because of course they are, it was the 90s. And they are destined to write the greatest rock and roll song in history to save the world from destruction. And they end up getting sent to hell, and to get their life back, they have to beat death at checkers. And from... I know, it's a really stupid premise. I'm really not doing this movie justice, but they are brilliant. Go and watch them. So we got Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bogus Journey, I think they're called, yeah. And it's the premise that this movie has been talked about for years, and Keanu Reeves has been saying it's the one thing he's wanted to do in like the last 10 years, and he's always said that he'd love the idea of revisiting these characters 20 years later when they're in their mid-40s, and they had the fate of the earth resting on them to write this one song, and they just never bothered because they were lazy, teenagers in the 90s. Sure. So it's now that's why it's called Face the Music, because it's 20 years later and the fate of the world rested in their shoulders, and they just ignored it because they couldn't be bothered. So
awesome. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to that now. Actually, I wouldn't mind going and watching it.
Go and watch the original two. They're just silly, stupid 90s humour comedy, and they're just worth watching. If that's it's.
Right, Ollie, I'm going to cut you off there because this has just turned into you babbling.
Yeah, okay. I don't know how. It was not pre-planned because the news dropped as we were recording.
Yeah, no, sure, but.
Okay, this has been episode 5 of the Polished Nerd podcast. We've been talking about gaming controversies. If you enjoyed what you heard today, make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hey, like our Facebook page. Why not? You gonna talk?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Social media sure is good.
I've been your host, Oliver Cardrick.
I've been Matt Paddison.
And thank you guys for listening.